Good morning, afternoon, or evening. My name is Brian McSwain, and today we will be talking about ethical data collection in marketing. This presentation is prepared for Marketing 822, Marketing Theory and Research with Dr. Scott Whitaker, Godbold School of Business at Gardner-Webb University. Let's begin. Let's first look at our roadmap. We will start off with a brief introduction, move on to privacy concerns and then privacy regulations, informed consent, transparency and consumer trust, wrap it all up with a conclusion, and finally, references. Data collection has quickly become a central component of modern marketing strategies. Companies rely heavily on it to make better, data-driven decisions. Researchers emphasize that businesses use collected data to more accurately target consumers, create personalized experiences, and optimize their marketing efforts. These benefits are undeniable, but they also come with significant challenges. As we see the rise of more advanced data collection technologies, ethical concerns follow closely behind. Researchers argue that these concerns primarily revolve around how companies collect, store, and use sensitive personal data. Consumers are increasingly aware of these practices and expect companies to treat their data with care, especially in the face of growing privacy risks. Ethical data collection isn't simply a matter of following the law. It's about following a set of moral principles that prioritize consumer privacy, trust, and transparency. Companies must align their data practices with both legal frameworks and ethical standards. In this presentation, we will explore four major areas of concern: privacy, informed consent, transparency, and the role of regulations like the General Data Protection Regulation and the California Consumer Privacy Act. These topics will help us better understand the challenges and responsibilities involved in ethical data collection and marketing. Privacy is perhaps the most significant ethical concern when it comes to data collection and marketing. Companies today have unprecedented access to personal data. This includes everything from browsing behaviors to detailed demographic profiles, which allow for highly targeted marketing strategies. While this can lead to more personalized and effective marketing, it also raises serious concerns about how this data is being collected, stored, and managed. One of the complexities we face is what is known as the privacy paradox. Consumers consistently express concerns about their privacy. Nobody wants to feel like they're being watched, yet they often continue to share their data freely, whether it's by accepting website cookies or signing up for loyalty programs without fully understanding the implications. This paradox puts consumers in a vulnerable position where their concerns don't necessarily translate into protective actions. The increasing use of behavioral tracking and machine learning only intensifies these issues. With these technologies, companies can predict future behaviors and preferences by analyzing past interactions. Even seemingly harmless data points, such as which products you browse, can be used to infer very personal characteristics. The ethical dilemma here is clear. Should companies be able to gather and infer such detailed information without explicit consumer consent? And if consumers aren't aware of this happening, how can they protect their privacy? Many consumers are unaware of the full extent of data collection happening behind the scenes. They may not know which data is being collected, how it's being used, or who is accessing it. This lack of transparency contributes to a growing feeling among consumers that they've lost control over their own personal information. To address the growing concerns about data privacy, several regulations have been introduced in recent years. Two of the most significant are the GDPR, also known as the General Data Protection Regulation, and the CCPA, known as the California Consumer Privacy Act. Both are designed to give consumers more control over their personal data, but they take slightly different approaches. The GDPR is one of the most comprehensive data protection laws in the world. It focuses on transparency, consent, and data minimization. Under the GDPR, companies are required to inform consumers about what data they are collecting and how they intend to use it. One of its key principles is data minimization, meaning that companies should only collect the data that is absolutely necessary for the purpose at hand. For example, if a company only needs an email address to send updates, they should not be asking for home addresses or other unnecessary information. The CCPA offers similar protections, but with a focus on giving consumers more power over their data. The CCPA allows consumers to request information about what data companies have collected on them, as well as the right to have that data deleted. Additionally, consumers have the right to opt out of the sale of their data. This gives consumers more control over their information by allowing them to limit how much of their personal data is shared with third parties. While these regulations are certainly steps in the right direction, they do pose challenges, particularly for smaller companies. Smaller companies often struggle with the complexities of complying with these regulations. They may lack the resources to implement the necessary changes, such as creating a new data storage system or hiring legal experts. As a result, while larger companies are typically better equipped to comply with GDPR and CCPA, smaller businesses may unintentionally fall short of these requirements, leading to inconsistent enforcement. Informed consent is a cornerstone of ethical data collection. But the reality is that many consumers agree to privacy policies without reading or understanding them. The vast majority of users simply click, "I agree," without reviewing the details of what they are consenting to. This creates a situation where consumers are essentially giving away their data without fully understanding the implications. If users don't know what they're agreeing to, how can we really say that their consent is informed? To address this issue, there is a concept known as contextual integrity. Contextual integrity means that the use of personal data should remain within the boundaries of the context in which it was originally shared. For example, if you provide your medical information to a healthcare provider, you expect that data to be used only for healthcare purposes. You wouldn't expect that same information to be used for unrelated marketing. And when companies cross these boundaries, they violate the principle of contextual integrity. This breach of trust can result in a significant loss of consumer confidence. One way to improve the situation is to simplify privacy policies. Privacy policies must be made clearer, shorter, and easier to understand. This can help consumers make better decisions about what data they are willing to share. This could include using plain language, often summaries or bullet points, and incorporating visual aids that highlights the key points. When consumers are able to easily understand what they are agreeing to, their consent becomes much more meaningful, and the relationship between the company and the consumer is built on a stronger foundation of trust. The ethical implications are clear. When companies fail to ensure that consumers understand what they're agreeing to, they run the risk of engaging in unethical data practices. This not only erodes consumer trust, but it also opens up the company to potential legal repercussions, especially as regulations like the GDPR and CCPA continue to emphasize the importance of informed consent. Transparency is incredibly important in building trust between companies and consumers. When companies are open about how they collect, store, and use personal data, it creates an environment where consumers feel more comfortable sharing their information. Transparency is key to gaining consumer trust. Without it, consumers may hesitate to engage with a brand, especially when they are unsure about what's happening with their data behind the scenes. However, transparency isn't as simple as just giving consumers all of the information. In fact, too much information can backfire. Researchers argue that when companies overwhelm consumers with technical details, the result is often met with confusion or disengagement. Consumers might stop reading or simply click through the information without fully understanding it. This creates a situation where transparency becomes meaningless because the consumer hasn't actually processed what they're being told. The key here is balance. Companies need to communicate clearly and effectively about their data practices. This means providing enough detail to ensure consumers understand what's happening, but not so much that it becomes overwhelming. Simple language, visual aids, and straightforward explanations can go a long way in helping consumers grasp how their data will be used. Transparency isn't enough on its own. Researchers go on to emphasize that accountability is just as important. For example, if a data breach occurs, companies that are transparent about the breach and take immediate action to fix the issue are much more likely to restore consumer trust. Being open about potential risks and addressing them quickly reinforces the idea that the company is acting ethically and in the best interest of its consumers. In the end, transparency and accountability are a balancing act. Consumers need enough information to make informed choices, but they shouldn't be buried under a mountain of details. By providing clear, digestible information and being upfront about risks, companies can foster trust and ensure that consumers feel empowered to control their own personal data. Let's take a step back and consider how ethical theories can guide data collection practices in marketing. Different ethical frameworks offer unique perspectives on what constitutes ethical behavior when it comes to collecting and using consumer data. First, we have utilitarianism, which suggests that actions are ethical if they lead to the greatest good for the greatest number of people. In the context of data collection, this means that if gathering personal information leads to better services, more personalized marketing, and improved consumer experiences, then the practice might be justified. Utilitarian thinking could support the idea that the overall benefits of data collection outweigh the risks. However, one of the main critiques of utilitarianism is that it can overlook the harm done to individual consumers, especially when their privacy is compromised. On the other hand, deontological ethics takes a more principle-based approach. Derived from the work of Immanuel Kant, this ethical framework emphasizes that actions must follow moral principles, regardless of the outcome. In the case of data collection, Kant would argue that it is inherently wrong to collect personal data without informed consent, no matter how beneficial the outcome might be for the company or its customers. This framework stresses the importance of protecting individual autonomy and privacy rights. Kant's perspective is that the ends do not justify the means, if those means involve comprising personal privacy. Lastly, we have virtue ethics, which focuses less on rules or outcomes and more on the moral character of the marketer. Aristotle's virtue ethics, as applied to marketing, suggests that marketers should act with honesty, transparency, and fairness. A virtuous marketer doesn't just follow regulations or try to maximize benefits. They genuinely strive to build trust and maintain positive, ethical relationships with consumers. When a company's data collection practices are guided by these virtues, the focus shifts towards doing the right thing because it's part of the company's ethical character, not just because it's required by law. Each of these ethical frameworks offers a different way of looking at the morality of data collection. Utilitarianism focuses on outcomes. Deontology focuses on principles. And virtue ethics focuses on character. Ideally, companies should strive to balance these approaches, ensuring that their data collection practices are effective, respectful of consumer rights, and rooted in ethical behavior. In conclusion, the ethical collection of data in marketing is a complex issue that involves balancing several key principles: transparency, informed consent, and accountability. Companies must go beyond simply complying with legal regulations to uphold moral standards that prioritize consumer privacy. As we've discussed, respecting consumer rights is not just a legal obligation, but also a way to build trust and foster long-term relationships with customers. The regulatory frameworks we've examined, such as the GDPR and the CCPA, have certainly made great strides in improving consumer protections. These laws empower consumers by giving them control over their personal data. However, enforcement remains a significant challenge, especially for smaller companies that may lack the resources to fully comply. Additionally, global companies must navigate the complexities of adhering to multiple regulatory standards in different regions, which can create enforcement gaps and inconsistencies. Companies face the ongoing challenge of balancing their business goals with ethical practices. Data collection is undeniably valuable for marketers. It allows for better targeting, personalization, and efficiency. But it's essential that this value is not pursued at the expense of consumer rights. Achieving this balance is crucial to maintaining consumer trust and avoiding both legal and reputational risks. Finally, it's important to recognize that the landscape of data collection is constantly evolving. As new technologies emerge, so too will new ethical challenges. Ongoing dialogue between businesses, regulators, and consumers is vital for adapting to these changes and ensuring that data collection practices remain both effective and ethically sound. The future of marketing will depend not just on technological advancements, but on our ability to manage data in a way that respects the rights and privacy of individuals. Thank you.